Okay guys, there's a huge bomb that has been dropped on the NFL less than 2 weeks away from Super Bowl 56, where head coach candidate Brian Flores is alleging in a lawsuit that the people in power within the league have been using him via interviews to avoid any penalties from the Rooney Rule. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Rooney Rule, it's a rule set in place by the NFL that requires teams to interview ethnic minority candidates for head coaching and senior football operation jobs in hopes of offering a level playing field and creating diversity around the league. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this rule. On paper it seems nice, but giving out interviews based on an individual's melatonin levels kind of defeats the purpose. And it's a tricky situation for Commissioner Roger Goodell because he can't force owners to hire minority coaches. Honestly, the league is just gonna have to find a better way to get rid of discriminatory practices, otherwise you're just gonna have teams continue to give meaningless interviews just so they avoid any fines from the NFL. Anyways, back to the lawsuit. Brian Flores, who was recently fired from the Miami Dolphins after posting 2 consecutive winning seasons, is a hot coaching candidate as we head into the offseason. He's already completed interviews with various teams and still has some interviews that were still pending. And as the 58-page lawsuit states, there was an upcoming interview with the New York Giants, but the only problem was the Giants already had a handshake agreement to hire another coach before they even got to Brian Flores. And interestingly enough, Brian only found out about this accidentally through a text communication with his former coach, Bill Belichick, who made the mistake of congratulating Brian prematurely. Anyways, here's a copy of that text transcript where Bill made the huge gaffe. In the text, you can see Bill congratulating Brian, who clearly seems lost, asking Belichick if he had heard anything about his hiring through the grapevine. And Bill responds back with, "Hello, New York Giants," with question marks. To which Flores says he hasn't interviewed with him yet and that it was scheduled on the upcoming Thursday. Now it's at this point where Bill kind of realizes he mixed up Brian Flores with Brian Daboll, who just so happened to be hired by the New York Giants a few days ago. Bill went on to downplay the confusion by saying, "I hear Buffalo and New York love you and you're going to be their guy," and that he hopes it works out for him. Flores thanks Bill, but then asks him if he was talking about Brian Daboll or himself, to which Bill Belichick gives the funniest response I've ever seen. "Sorry, I fucked up. I double checked and misread the text. I think they're naming Brian Daboll. I'm sorry about that." Jeez, imagine that. You're about to interview with the New York Giants and you're in a text conversation with another head coach who has this much inside info. Anyways, this text conversation didn't even scratch the surface of this class action lawsuit, as Flores also alleged that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offered him $100,000 for every Dolphins team loss in the 2019 season in order to tank for Joe Burrow. There was a report that surfaced earlier in the week that Miami offered 3 first-round picks to the Bengals to try and steal Burrow away. So this kind of shows you that the Dolphins were interested in the young QB. Anyways, Flores ignored his owner's request and proceeded to win 3 of his last 5 games, finishing the season with a 5-11 record and giving them the 5th overall pick, in which they selected Tua Tagovailoa. But this was not the only controversy surrounding Miami owner in the lawsuit, as there is a part that I'm going to read that is pretty damning as it relates to the owner violating league tampering rules. After the 2019 season, owner Stephen Ross invited Flores to his yacht for lunch, and shortly after he arrived, Ross told Flores that he set up an impromptu meeting with another prominent quarterback. Flores refused the meeting and left the yacht immediately. And after the incident, Flores was treated with disdain and held out as someone who was non-compliant and difficult to work with. And ultimately, this kind of makes you understand why Flores was fired after the end of the Dolphins' 2022 campaign. There were a lot of reports that the relationship between the team and the head coach was unmanageable, making Brian look out to be the bad guy and the main culprit for his acting. But I'm going back to this prominent QB, as it's being reported that this QB was none other than Tom Brady, who just so happened to be shopping around for a new team after the 2019 season. And it's just crazy that this news is dropping on the same day Brady announced his retirement after 22 seasons. And if it does come out that this was Tom Brady, I'm not going to say that this is a stain on his career, but it certainly does leave a stain on the day of his retirement announcement. And lastly, there was one other team that the Brownsville native had a bone to pick with, and that was the Denver Broncos and their president of football operations, John Elway. The lawsuit noted that the Broncos team president Joe Ellis and John Elway showed up hungover and disheveled in a 2019 interview with Brian Flores. He also claimed that the pair showed up an hour late, making it seem like they were merely giving an interview to Brian to adhere to the Rooney Rule. And Denver ended up hiring Vic Fangio later on. However, the team did release a statement shortly after denying Flores' claim of the 3.5-hour meeting, along with stating they had detailed notes, analysis, and evaluations from the interview. Anyways, with that being said, this is a huge bombshell and a ticking time bomb on the NFL. Here's Brian Flores, who most believe is one of the best coaches around the league, out of a job, and I'm going to be honest, probably will never get another head coaching position in the league after this lawsuit. He's basically kissing his NFL coaching future away to fight this injustice around the league. This is such a huge story because it also drags in a couple of other NFL teams, but also on top of that, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.